Hey guys, so just like yesterday, we're not going to use the book in today's video. I know you're super disappointed. Try not to cry too much. Um, Instead, today we're going to be practicing with our brains a little bit more, which is a good thing, right? That's what we're supposed to do. So I think I mentioned earlier in one of the videos this week that one of our goals is to be able to do some of these percents in our heads, especially using this manageable chunk idea where you sort of break numbers down into like 10%, 5%, 20%, 25%, because it's easy to build up from there, right? It's easy to make 100% if you know what 20% of whatever it is. So we're going to try to like do some of that in our head for a couple of reasons. It's really good to be able to do percents in your head, at least like estimate them or do them kind of quickly, because you're just hit with percent so much anywhere you go in the store or bank or just whatever. And yeah, I know we all have calculators in our pocket, in our phones or whatever. But if you're walking around a store and you're doing like a bunch of grocery shopping and you're buying a bunch of things, it's actually not all that convenient to like, okay, let me get my phone out of my pocket, right? Let me like unlock it or whatever. Let me open a calculator app. Let me clear the number that's already in there from last time I used this thing. And then let me punch it in or whatever, right? Like if you get really good at this stuff, you can actually kind of do in your head faster and easier than pulling the calculator out and more conveniently, if you ask me. And being able to do this can protect you from people trying to rip you off, trying to say something is this percent or that percent, and it's actually not. Or like at Safeway, they have this rule where if something doesn't ring up for however it was supposed to, they'll give you that item for free or a gift card. And I've caught them like over 10 times on that. Like they keep having to give me free stuff because I can do the math in my head right there at the register, and they're always ringing stuff up wrong. So another reason is when we're doing this math in the book and we're writing it down and we're punching the numbers in the calculator and stuff like that, it works a certain part of your brain, which is good. We're learning stuff. But when you force your brain to like crunch the numbers and you're like kind of manipulating them into like, oh, let me make it smaller and then let me make it bigger, you're working a different part of your brain. And we want to make sure that we get that going too. So I'm going to warn you that some of this can get pretty hard. If you're not able to do it like as fast as I'm asking you to do as it plays, you can pause it or just go along with the video even if you can't do it. I mean, that's okay. This is hard. I know it is. So don't feel bad if if you can't get every single one or whatever, especially on some of the harder ones. So I've got a PowerPoint that I would have shown today in class if we were in class. Let me see if I can get that up on here. There we go. Okay. And then let me their present thing from here. No, here. No. Maybe I want to go here. Yeah, there we go. All right. So mental math, percents. So basically what's going to happen is it's going to just give you a simple little question across the top. Here, I'll show you the first one. The first one is, what is 10% of 90? And I want you to, no calculator, no pencil, no scratch, nothing. Everything we're doing in this lesson is 100% in your brain, just as best you can in here. And if you get it, great. And if you don't worry about it. Okay, so go ahead and think about this one for a couple seconds. This one should be easy. Okay, and 10% of 90 is 9. And if we were doing this in class, I'd ask different people to explain how they did it and how they think about it. And this is actually like one of the best lessons of like the whole year in terms of like getting people to explain their thinking and the way they do some of these questions, because a lot of them have different ways you could do them. But since it's just me, I'll explain you the way I would do it, ways that I've heard other people explain it, and we'll just go from there. So so this one I think is relatively easy. 10% is 1/10 of 100. So to get 10% of something, just divide it by 10. 90 divided by 10 is 9. All right, so now, so let me go back. So the kind of the point of that was that now we have a manageable chunk of 90, right? Because we now know that 10% of 90 is 9. Let's see if we can use that manageable chunk moving forward. So what is 25% of 90? Keeping in mind that 10% is 9. So if you need more time than I give you throughout this video to think about it in your brain, you can always pause the video for as long as you want to look at the question before I reveal the answer and talk about it. So the answer is 22.5. And the way I would do it is I would say, okay, I know that my manageable chunk of 90 is 9. 9 is 10% of 90. And if I want 25%, then I need one 10% chunk, which is 9, another 10% chunk, which is 18, and then half of another 10% chunk, right? So what's half of 9? That's 4.5. So I got to add 18 plus 4.5, 22.5, right? So a lot of like little micro transactions or micro calculations going on in our head, right? Nothing too super hard, but you got to like, okay, 9 plus 9. All right, I got my 18. Now I need to do a 9 divided by 2. All right, I got the 4.5. I got to add these things together, right? It requires a lot of like operational memory stuff going on in your brain. All right, let's try another one. Okay, so the answer to that one is 20%. So 5 is 1/5 of 25. And so if I want to go from 25 to 5, in other words, I would divide by 5. And so in order to figure out what percent that is, I just take 100%, divide that by 5, and I get 20%. I forgot I wanted to say something about the last slide. Going back here. So another way I've heard people say they're going to do this one is they're like, well, I know if the question was what is 25% of 100, the answer would be 25. And so the difference between 100 and 90 is just 10. And so if I figure out what 25% of that 10 is, I just take it off of what the answer would have been if the question is what is 25% of 100. So 100 minus 90 is 10. So there's this 10% chunk sort of missing. 25% of that is 2.5. So I just take 25 minus 2.5 and I get 22.5. Somebody always brings that up every year, and I think it's an interesting way to do that question. You might even have your own different way, I don't know. Oh, you know what's something that I've been meaning to say all week in the videos and I keep forgetting to? You can switch these orders. Because the word of just means multiply, 25% of 90 is literally the exact same question with the exact same answer as if you asked it the other way. 90% of 25 is also 22.5, and you can use that strategically. Sometimes a question can be really hard if you ask it one way, like what is 14% of 50? You're like 14% of 50, take you a second to think about it. But if I ask it the other way, what is 50% of 14? Yeah, oh, that's easy. Half of 14 is 7. But the answer to both those questions is the same. So sometimes you can flip a question around and make it easier for yourself. All right, let's move on. So we did this one already. So let's keep this in mind though. So 5 is 20% of 25. Okay, so the answer to that one is 40%. And the way I would use this one, or the way I would do this one, is using the manageable chunks. I would say, okay, well, I know 10% of 40 is 4. And so can I build 16 from 4? Like, okay, so 4 is 10%. That means 8 must be 20%. 12 must be 30%. And so 16 must be 40%, right? So taking a manageable chunk and then building your way to the number that you want would be the strategy there. I'm sure there's other strategies too. If you have a different way of doing it, great. All right, so keeping in mind, in the last one, we use the manageable chunk. 4 is 10% of 40. See if you can apply that to the next one. Okay, so I'm just realizing this one is about 45, not 40. I don't know why I said use 4 is 10% of 40 on this question. You don't need that. Okay, if you need more time, you could pause. But the answer to this one is 30%. So you are using a 10% chunk again, right? If you're doing it the way I'm thinking you should do it. I'm thinking I would say, all right, I know 10% of 45 is 4.5. It's not the easiest number in the world to work with, but it's also not that bad, right? So, um, so if 4.5 is 5%, sorry, 4.5 is 10%, then let me see if I can build 13.5 from there. So 4.5 plus 4.5 is 9. So 9 is 20%, which makes sense, right? Because 45 divided by 5 is 9. Okay. And then let me add another 4.5 from there. 9 plus 4.5 is 13.5. So I used 1, 2, 3 10% chunks. 3 times 10 is 30%, right? So don't feel bad if this is super hard for you and you're not able to do this. Like even if you're not getting it right or you're not able to do it, just the fact that you're forcing your brain to like think about it and try is still so good. You're getting a lot of like brain workout doing that. All right, let's try another one. Okay, so hopefully that one didn't take you too long. 39 is 1% of 3,900. You could say 3,900, but I tend to say 3,900. So, right, if 39 is 1% of something, then you just need to multiply by 100 to figure out what the whole in this case would be 3,900. Okay, so let's move on. So now 39 is 10% of what number? Okay, so let's see the answer to this one. 390, right? So since 10% is just 1/10 of 100%, you just need to take your 39 and multiply by 10. So here's what I wanted you to see though. If you go back to the last one, when 39 was just a 1% part of some whole number, the whole number had to be 3,900. And then when we made the percent 10 times bigger in the next question, the whole, or the answer, I guess if you want to call it that, became 1/10 the size, right? Multiplying the percent by 10 in this case made the whole essentially be divided by 10, right? Like there was this inverse like size change there. And that can be used to quickly figure some things out. If one operation is easy and then you can like sort of shift to the next one, that can help you. I'll show you what I mean in the next thing. So like keep this in mind. 39 is 10% of 390. Okay, so So now 39 only represents a 5% chunk of some number. So there's probably two answers floating out there right now in people's brains. You either said, okay, that means that I need to double 390 and get 780, or you thought I need to take half of 390 and get, what would that be, 195, I think? Yeah. So I hope you doubled 390, because the idea here is that since 39 now represents half as big of a chunk as it did in the previous question when it was 10%, then that means if 39 is only half as big of a chunk, right, 5% instead of 10%, then that means the whole thing must be twice as big if the chunk is half as big, right? Um, or if you're just more of a multiplication person, you could have just said, oh well, 5% is 1/20th, so let me just multiply 39 times 20, and you get 780. So if the percent chunk goes down, right? Like the percent of the whole that this number 39 represents, if that goes down, then the whole must be bigger, it must get larger. If the percent that 39 represents gets bigger, then that must mean that it's part of a smaller number, and that number, the whole number, must go down. That's sort of the relationship I'm trying to get you to see and like work with in your brain right now. All right, so in the last question, we figured out that 39 is 5% of 780. So what's this one? Okay, so the 39 represents 3 times of a bigger chunk this time, right? 3 times of a bigger percent. So if it represents 3 times of a bigger piece of the whole, then that means the whole in this case must be 1/3 the size, or it must be much smaller. So hopefully you took 780 and divided by 3 and got 260. And so like the strategy that I would want you to see here total is that if I just tossed at you 39 is 15% of what number? Like you'd be like, I don't know. But you could take it step by step and say, okay, well, I know 39 is 10% of 390. That means it must be 5% of 780. And that means that it must be 15% of 260, right? That would be some super duper high level like thinking and ability to be able to do that. I honestly don't even think that most seventh graders could go through and do that mentally. But I just want you to be like thinking about the idea of doing it. Okay, so hopefully you didn't think this one was too bad. I'll show you the answer, 78. So in this case, I'm thinking the manageable chunk should be 10% of 60 is 6, right? And so if you have 100% of 60, well, that's just 60 in itself. And then you need 3 of those 10% chunks. So 3 sixes essentially, right? So start with 60 and then 66, 72, 78. I don't think that one was as hard as some of the previous ones we've done. All right, and I think this is going to be the last one. All right, so let's see the answer to this one. Hopefully you got 110. So for me, I'd be thinking, all right, well, 100% of 44 is just 100. And then if I want 200% of that, wait, what did I say? I feel like I said that wrong. 100% of 44 is just 44. And so if I want 200%, then I just need to double it. That gets me to 88. And then I need an additional 50%, right? So 50% of 44 is 22. So I just take that 22 and I add it to that 88, and I get 110. So just breaking things down into pieces and then combining the pieces. All right. I think the next one's going to be like a word problem. If it is, I'm just going to go and stop the video. If you want to do the word problem, you can, I guess. Yeah. Remove this. All right. Yeah, that's going to go ahead and yeah, let's see. Let me click this, and then, all right. Have a good weekend.